the end of the world. I could feel all this death.
Everything they built will fall! And from the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one!
Growing tech trend takes personal computing to its highest level. It's gone from hands-on to hands-in. More people are biohacking their own bodies with implanted computer chips that can perform a wide range of tasks. Local 12's Joe Webb found a local guy who is all in.
There's an app for everything.
Garrett Fry is an already accomplished entrepreneur, and other than that, seems like a pretty typical 21-year-old college student. Until you look more closely.
It's right here in my left hand, and you can see it and feel it if you touch it.
Hardly bigger than a grain of rice is a radio frequency identification device implanted between Garrett Fry's thumb and index finger. Using an app on his phone, Fry uses the chip to open the deadbolt on his front door and unlock his phone.
You can program it to send, a specific text, turn on an alarm, set a timer, run a program, turn off your Wi-Fi. There's a vast number of things that you can do with the actual chip.
Fry's chip was injected using a syringe. He had a professional do it. The chip and insertion cost him $150. He's had it more than a year, but just recently told his parents.
You gotta get your ears pierced or a tattoo, that's one thing, but, getting an actual implant of, an RFID chip is, it can be a taboo subject.
By the way, his parents are okay with it.
Garrett Fry's implant is very simple. Like he said, it's not much more complicated than the identification implant that you would put in your dog or your cat. But they're getting more and more complex, recording body functions for long periods of time. Some of them functioning as compasses that you can get your directions and see them lighted up through your skin.
The technology is just starting to take off, and more people are embracing it or ingesting it. Biohacking has sparked moral and ethical discussions, and in computing circles, it has raised security questions. As the technology has shrunk from mainframes to desktops to laptops to phones to implants, has security kept up?
Unfortunately, I think given that every technology generation I've seen, we make the same security mistakes, and we don't secure a new generation of technology until the mistakes are bad enough and cause enough dollars or human injuries, unfortunately, to make people take security seriously again.
Garrett Fry says the information on his chip is encrypted and not hackable, but Dr. Walden isn't so sure that's the case. Either way, it's working, unlocking doors, literally and figuratively.
The limits, it's a limitless technology. There's tons of things we can do with it, and we're really just getting started.
And Garrett Fry is getting first-hand experience on just what the future may hold. In Highland Heights, Joe Webb, Local 12 News.
Crazy, isn't it? But it will be what we all do someday. It will be what we all do someday. It will be what we all do someday.
Diminish the biblical standards. When you diminish the way God made human beings, when you stop having male and female, then you've got problems. And school districts across this country now have to develop policies to allow transgender students to choose either boys or girls' bathrooms or locker rooms. I mean, you say, okay, school choice, but the Department of Education said if the schools don't comply, they'll lose the money they get from the federal government. So the big brother is stepping in to enforce this nutty policy. Heather Stills brings us the story.
I'm speaking on behalf of my daughter, who does not want to be in a locker room with a biological boy.
In suburban Chicago recently, hundreds of parents delivered a strong message to their school board. Keep transgender students out of opposite-sex locker rooms and bathrooms.
There are sexual predators out there that will take advantage of this. The reason why we keep males and females separated is to prevent problems. But now you're saying, oh, no, there's no problem.
If we're not going to separate our bathrooms and locker rooms by anatomy, then what are we going to do? Like, what are we doing?
Action by the Department of Education sparked this meeting and could lead to financial consequences for school districts across the country. The debate centers around Title IX, the 1972 federal law which guarantees equal education benefits for male and female students. 2 years ago, the Department of Ed updated guidelines, saying its non-discrimination clause now applies to gender identity. Illinois' 211 became the first school district it found in violation. Its crime, denying a boy who became a transgender girl access to female bathrooms and locker rooms. The department told the district comply or lose millions in federal funds. Alliance Defending Freedom attorney Matt Sharp says that potential financial loss could cripple school districts. The federal government typically pays them anywhere from $1,200 to $2,000 per student each year.
A lot of money, especially for smaller rural school districts that don't have the same tax base. And so for these schools, that federal funding is vital to continue to provide athletic programs and sports and books and lunches and all of the things students need to learn.
Schools are also faced with an open definition of what it means to be transgender.
So schools are left in this very difficult situation of saying, how can we know if this is a student just wanting to gain access to the opposite sex restrooms or a student who genuinely believes they are the gender of the opposite biological sex?
It happened last year at this Gloucester, Virginia high school. A girl who became a transgender boy told administrators that he wanted to use the boy's facilities.
The Gloucester transgender student has changed his name and undergone hormone treatments in order to create a more masculine appearance. He says using the girls' bathroom or even a private bathroom would make him feel like an outcast.
For me, the thought of going into a separate restroom, which might as well have been labeled other, was just far too much to bear.
Some students back in District 211 told CBN News they agree separate is not equal.
If you separate somebody from their peers, you can't call that equality. It's just not fair to them.
People are talking about justice for everyone, privacy for all students. But what about this specific student who has been discriminated against?
But privacy advocates, including many parents, believe separate facilities provide a reasonable compromise. The Christian legal group Alliance Defending Freedom says schools should adopt such policies.
But as an act of compassion and using policies like ours, they're saying, we will give you a private place to change and use the restroom. We are going to accommodate you so that you can have a place at school that's just yours while protecting everyone else.
School choice advocates like Neil McCluskey say while the federal government should protect against discrimination, it should stay out of the transgender debate for now.
There are competing values there. A lot of people are concerned about privacy. A lot of people think that's a moral issue. And it's something that should be debated at the local and state level.
A federal court will soon decide the Virginia case and could set a national precedent. In Illinois, District 211 recently settled with the Department of Ed. It built changing stalls in its locker rooms for transgender students.
They're trying to rewrite Title IX by memo.
It's a defeat for moms Vicki Wilson and Lisa Moran, who have formed a parent group to support separate facilities. They're urging others to get ready and take part in the debate.
This is going to be affecting so many districts. A lady from a neighboring district just came up to me and said, I need help.
It's a social experiment most parents never dreamed would happen, giving students the ability to choose their bathroom and locker room. And with no scientific or legal definition of what it means to be transgender, the new federal policy has left the door open for many difficult, awkward, and potentially abusive situations.
The residents of rural Sparta Township will be the first in Kent County to see an openly transgender person on the ballot. 24-hour News 8's Barton Dieters has this story, new at 6. Barton?
The choice for Sparta Township supervisor will include Gidget Grundyke, formerly known as Scott Wade Langford. In 2011, Grundyke officially changed her name as she transitioned from a man to a woman. After suffering discrimination and even physical abuse as a transgender person, Grundyke feels it is time for someone like her to seek public office in Sparta.
I believe me running will help other people like myself go out and, you know, step up to the plate and run for office and not be afraid to.
Grundyke says while she wants Sparta Township to embrace LGBT rights, as a business owner and lifelong resident of the area where her family goes back generations, she would represent a broad cross-section of issues.
There's a lot of things we could do. I mean, we just can't just focus on one topic and everything.
Speaking from the small hair salon she owns, Grundyke acknowledged she has a long shot to win. Larry Duchesne Jr., operations manager for the West Michigan LGBT support group Grand Rapids Pride Center, says Grundyke is the first openly transgender person he is aware of running in Kent County. He says it is a brave move by Grundyke to come out and run for public office. Dale Bergman has been the Sparta Township supervisor for 20 years and plans to run again. He supports Grundyke's plan to run, but says there are more issues at stake.
Naturally, it's the office and the experience and how well somebody would think you could do the office. So it might not even have anything to do with the, the transgender aspect at all.
Bergman says he believes that Sparta Township residents will make their decision fairly. Kent County Elections Director Susan DeSteiger says because Grundyke changed her name less than 10 years ago, her previous name will also appear on the ballot.
There is a significant risk of tornadoes today across the Deep South. We call this Dixie Alley. I know you've heard of Tornado Alley, but this is the Deep South in the wintertime where tornadoes can develop and do develop and keep going even after dark and after you've gone to sleep. That's where they're most deadly, when you don't get the warnings because you are asleep. We have the Gulf of Mexico moisture coming up this way. We have a jet stream over the top of this area, the jet coming in from the west. That, in this general area, will make enough shear, will make enough twist in the atmosphere that we'll see tornadoes on the ground. Absolutely, I don't think there's any question of that. Whether they'll be Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Florida, or Georgia, I don't yet know, but there's certainly a potential for that severe weather all night long, and especially after dark. So this afternoon we move through Louisiana, into Mississippi, into Alabama, and across the Deep South. Farther south you are, the warmer and the more moist it is. Farther to the north, the less likely, but just heavy rain and maybe some flooding. But by tomorrow, even through the morning hours, there could be severe weather through Georgia, the Carolinas, and by tomorrow afternoon, all the way to the northeast. Stay safe tonight and also stay safe tomorrow as these storms move farther to the east.
You're checking in because the damage reports are definitely starting to stack up across so many Louisiana parishes. You can definitely note some rotation out there, and we already have the damage in the pictures to prove it, including this Gold's Gym, which took a very hard hit in Prairieville, Louisiana. Certainly urging everybody to seek shelter whenever tornado warnings are issued for your community. Look at that. A lot of debris. That's what people tend to get hurt by. Flying debris as well as glass. Now, the severe weather outbreak is still going to be a concern as we go through tonight and even overnight into Wednesday. So make sure that if you're in these locations that you have some way to be alerted. Tornado watch is still in effect for many parishes, as we mentioned, until Tuesday, 5 o'clock Central. We anticipate more tornado watches are going to be issued before the night is out. So again, high level threats of tornadoes, damaging winds as well as hail, and that threat will spread eastward bound as we go from late and overnight. Damaging winds and hail will be a concern as you see extending over into Georgia as well as the Carolinas, and also lining up in Florida as we go into the day on Wednesday.
Let us off a little bit early, and I was driving through on my way home. I happened to see all this action right at Airline Highway 42 in Prairieville, Louisiana. I don't know if it was a very strong straight line wind or if it was an actual tornado. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but this whole side of this Gold's Gym got sheared off. You can see right into the side of it, and across the street there's another shopping center with a cleaner that the whole side of that building got sheared off. and a couple of other buildings next up. A roof got blown off, and they were actually diverting traffic off of the roads through parking lots to get people around some of the debris. So it's pretty crazy out there. That whole shopping center just finished being developed at about 3 or 4 months ago, and that gym just opened up like within the last 2 months, I believe. So kind of a hit to that business right there, I would say.
Oh my God! It's right there. It's crossing the road right now. Yes. It's right there. It's right there.
I'm using your arms as arms. No, don't move, Dad.
Okay. Yeah. There it is, right there. It's crossing the road. Look at that. There it is. It's crossing. It just crossed.
How scary is this? This is just south of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Tuesday afternoon. Look at that, right to left on your screen. That's actually a tornado crossing the road. That tornado did actually a pretty good amount of damage in a city called Prairieville, Louisiana. That's the inside of a gym. How many people go work out after work? I know I do. I mean, you walk into a workout place and it looks like that. How scary is that? This is a tornado outbreak that is just underway. I mean, it's going to be a long night. Parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida Panhandle especially, maybe even parts of Arkansas, so please be careful. Now, so far, the good news to report is that we've had no injuries, but Livingston, another spot that got hit by an apparent tornado, and of course the Weather Service is going to have to go out and do damage surveys on all these. Some of them we could see on radar. Look at that tree snapped right there. More scenes like this likely through the night.
A glimpse of the damage in Fiji after the strongest cyclone on record there. Bar Town on the main island escaped a direct hit, but the storm still left its mark. Cyclone Winston brought torrential rain and 300 km/h winds. That's flattened homes, trees and electricity cables. There's damage in other parts of the main island, even though it's the part of the country with the strongest infrastructure to withstand such winds and rain.
It is also vital that everyone remain in their homes while government teams and officials carries out the important work of repairing and restoring our critical infrastructure. There is a great deal of debris on our roads and in our communities. Power lines have gone down all over the country, and roofing iron, glass, live electric wires, and other hazardous materials pose serious threats.
The cyclone did pass closer to some of Fiji's other 300 islands. Phone and power lines are down, so it's been difficult to contact people living there. Some deaths and injuries have been confirmed. Relief workers are finding it difficult to get around because of trees strewn across the roads.
I have offered Australia's support, and we have in place pre-positioned supplies in Suva that are available. I've also offered the ADF to send a P3 Orion so that we can carry out aerial surveillance, particularly in the outer lying islands, and do a needs assessment.
Fiji relies on the tourist industry. There are about 1,200 Australians registered there, and other nationalities also affected. Getting home will be difficult because airports have been closed. Many of the low-lying islands are flooded and more flash floods and mudslides are feared. Rescuers are trying to supply drinking water. The Fijian government has declared a 30-day state of emergency. Because many of the islands are remote, it may yet be some time before the full extent of the damage from the natural disaster is known. Caroline Malone, Al Jazeera.
Breaking news right now at 4:31 from the ABC 15 live desk, and a new sinkhole has opened up in the East Valley, and this could impact your morning commute. ABC 15's Justin Pizzera is live for us near Greenfield Road in Germain. Justin, looks like an active situation behind you.
It is an active situation, and Gilbert police say that this is going to be active for a long time because look at this sinkhole. It is huge. It is large enough to swallow a Ford F-150. If we kind of pan over to the right, you can see the truck over here. That was swallowed up in the sinkhole. They just pulled it out. When we were getting up on scene, they were using that Cat machinery right back there. They were pulling it out of that sinkhole and put it over here. Thankfully, that driver is okay. But you know, the really scary thing about this is the second sinkhole out here in the East Valley this month. The other sinkhole in the Queen Creek area, a 60-year-old farmer. He was walking back to his truck after working in a field when he was swallowed up by a sinkhole. It was about 15 feet wide, 12 feet deep. It took crews a few hours to retrieve the body of Guadalupe Gomez Nila. Now, he left behind his wife, 8 children, and 27 grandchildren. The land in that area had just been irrigated, so authorities believe that that is why the land was so weak. And at that area, at this point, we're not sure what caused this sinkhole. We're told again that driver is okay, but Gilbert police told me that this area is going to be shut down for a couple of days. We're live in Gilbert. Justin Pizzera, ABC 15.
Now crews in Gilbert trying to figure out what caused the ground to cave in, swallowing a truck.
Yeah, luckily the driver walked away without a scratch. We want to show you where this happened, Greenfield Road in Germain, because this area is going to be shut down for days. ABC 15's Raquel Cervantes is there live tonight. And Raquel, experts are saying this is not a sinkhole.
Yeah, that's right. A geologist with the State Geological Survey tells me this is actually not a natural sinkhole, saying the cause of this gaping hole is likely man-made, which could point to a problem with the street itself or something underneath it. Crews out here have a ton of work before they can even begin to start digging out this hole. You might have heard the expression hitting the open road, but in this case, that's probably not what the driver had in mind.
I mean, there's a truck tire down in there. Somebody drove into that hole.
As crews worked through the night to remove the truck from the sinkhole, they're now working on figuring out why the ground opened up.
Our Public Works Department out here working to figure out the cause and determine what the necessary repairs will be.
Scientists at the Arizona Geological Survey say it's technically not a sinkhole in the geological sense. The Phoenix Basin doesn't have the kind of rock or soil where this would naturally happen.
There's just not a good reason to think there's natural sinkholes there.
Just 2 weeks ago, a sinkhole was fatal in nearby Queen Creek. A farm worker died when the earth underneath him caved in. But the geologist says that also is not a natural sinkhole.
Man-made causes. You know, there you had the flood irrigation, you've had some potential like saturation of the soil.
On this road, neighbors say there's been construction several times recently.
So the concern is with the backfill. Hopefully it's backfilled properly.
It makes me scared to even drive on the roads. As I was driving to the gym this morning, I'm like, the road could collapse any time.
And we're also learning the size of this sinkhole. It's about 50 feet in length, about 30 feet wide, and about 10 feet deep. That's about twice of my height. Now, this road will be closed, could be closed for several weeks because this work could take that long to repair. Back to you guys.
Well, since they think it's man-made, hopefully they'll figure out what caused it very soon. Keep us posted. Thanks so much for your
now,
report.
where experts are baffled over a killer disease that has yet to be identified. It has killed at least 25 children in Lagos so far. Health authorities have taken samples and are analyzing them. CCTV's Deji Patmos has this update now from the city.
According to officials, the epicenter of the disease is a fishing community in Lagos. But it wasn't until later, when 25 children had died, that health authorities stepped up efforts to identify the mystery illness. Now, symptoms reportedly include a rash not unlike measles. A team of epidemiologists was sent to the community earlier in February. While there has been no more reported deaths, the team hasn't recorded a breakthrough yet. The community itself may live near an affluent area of Lagos, but families live in poor conditions with little hygiene or safe drinking water. The results of the laboratory investigations are expected this week. Deji Patmos, CCTV, Lagos, Nigeria.
Radioactive water has been found at a nuclear power plant in Japan just days before it was scheduled to reopen. The Kansai Electric Power Company said it found 34 litres of contaminated water at the Takahama nuclear plant in Fukui Prefecture, 500 kilometres west of Tokyo. The company said the water has been cleared and there's been no impact on the environment. It added that it is now investigating the reasons for the leak. The company did not say if the plant's scheduled reopening would be delayed. Kansai Electric shut down the reactor in July 2011, months after the earthquake and tsunami that devastated the Fukushima nuclear power plant, where similar radioactive water leakages have also been found.
President Obama has announced his plan to close the controversial prison in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Suspected terrorists have been held there since January of 2002, just after the war on terror began. NBC's Tracy Potts breaks down the president's announcement and his plans.
Good afternoon. President Obama has announced that he wants to move 35 terror suspects who are eligible to other countries and then close Guantanamo Bay, Gitmo as it's known, and move the rest, dozens of dangerous terror suspects, to prisons and military bases right here in the United States. 13 so far undisclosed facilities. The president argues that we are actually less safe housing them at Gitmo because they're using that as a recruiting tool. He says our allies are constantly asking about the 91 prisoners left there, and he argues it's draining $455 million a year from our military.
We can capture terrorists, protect the American people, and when done right, we can try them and put them in our maximum security prisons, and it works just fine. We're already holding a bunch of really dangerous terrorists here in the United States.
The top Republican in the Senate says since it's illegal, the president's plan is going nowhere.
So we'll review President Obama's plan, but since it includes bringing dangerous terrorists to facilities in U.S. communities, he should know that the bipartisan will of Congress has already been expressed against that proposal.
Closing Gitmo and trying these suspects in federal courts, the president is trying to fulfill a campaign promise in an election year. That could be tough, if not impossible. The House Armed Services Committee has already announced they'll hold a hearing. On Capitol Hill, I'm Tracy Potts.
Russia is threatening to use tactical nuclear weapons in Syria. Well, that's just part of the default setting of NATO, the United States, and Russia, that if you have a force overwhelmed by a ground force, use tactical nuclear weapons to defeat them. But that's a big deal that Saudi Arabia says they're about to invade with ground troops into Syria. And say what you want, folks. I don't take sides here. I've never been to Russia. I'm not lionizing Vladimir Putin. My issue is Syria has invited Putin in. This is on Russia's doorstep. The West is starting these wars. Look what they've done in Libya. The big news is Russia has reached a deal with the U.S., according to Reuters, to have a Syrian ceasefire on February 27th. We'll see if that holds up, and that's good because the Saudi Arabians have threatened to put tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of ground troops into Syria to battle the Russians there and the Assad regime to prop up their al-Qaeda and ISIS forces. And Russia has threatened to use tactical nuclear weapons after Saudi Arabia last week said we have nukes and we'll use them. So things are escalating in a big, big way.
Now, the Syrian cities of Homs and Damascus have been hit by a wave of suicide bombings. The Islamic State militant group says it carried out the attacks. Kim Mok-yeon has the details.
Multiple bomb attacks killed at least 100 people in Damascus and Syria's western city of Homs on Sunday. The attacks came on the same day as U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry announced that Washington and Moscow had reached a principal agreement to cease hostilities between the various parties in Syria. He said Presidents Obama and Putin would speak in the coming days to complete the deal. The bloodshed may have rocked the prospects for a ceasefire. The London-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says at least 57 people were killed and 100 others wounded in the twin-car bomb blast that hit Homs. Later, more than 60 people were killed in a triple suicide attack near the Shiite shrine of Sayyida Zainab, south of Damascus. Witnesses say suicide bombers blew themselves up after detonating a car bomb. The Islamic State militant group has claimed responsibility for all the attacks. The death toll is expected to rise since majority of the casualties are in critical condition. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says that since Sunday, at least 50 Islamic State fighters had been killed by government troops backed by Russian airstrikes in the northern city of Aleppo. It added that troops are continuing their advance against Islamic State positions from the eastern part of the city. Kim Mok-yeon, Arirang News.
düşmüyor. Düşse diyeceğiz balon değer. Ama balona da çok benziyor.